when you can consider that it looked like an Essendon Hawthorn season before the first game was played, and from that moment on, every side now does have a chance, with the possible exception of St Kilda, and yet we saw St Kilda come out and beat Fitzroy just the other week. And
could have beaten Geelong.
Fitzroy have beaten Collingwood. Well, it is home ground advantage at Collingwood for Fitzroy, isn't it? But it's great for football, and it's great to think that you can go along and not really know the result of the game, and I think that's what it's all about.
I think about 4 weeks ago, Pete, you could have said, OK, the 4 is possible, the 5 is possibly decided out of 16, but now it's right down to number 10 again, and which, as Bob said, makes the competition just super, doesn't it, really?
Well, it does, and I think on that we might take a look at the league ladder now. If the Swans win this afternoon, they could go up to 4th place. If they win well, they could take Hawthorn's spot at number 3 on the ladder, behind Essendon and Footscray. And of course Carlton, if they win, could take over the Sydney Swans place. They've got a fairly handy percentage, Carlton, of 106, so the Blues well and truly still in the fight for the 5, and so too, as you mentioned, Bob, the number 11 club, Fitzroy.
Yes, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And when you look back at the game Fitzroy played up here, obviously they played on the same vein yesterday, and when they're hot, Fitzroy, they really are a good side.
All right, well, there it is. The umpires for this afternoon's match are Peter Howe and Jeff Morrow. Peter Howe and Jeff Morrow, the men in white this afternoon, and they tell me that both of them are umpiring their 50th senior games today. So good luck, fellas. We hope it's a great clash. We'll be back for more comment in just a moment. Welcome back to the SCG, and let's check the respective teams now as they were selected for today's game. And first of all, Bob Skilton, the Swans, no change from last week.
Well, that's not hard to understand, is it, the way they performed against Footscray last week. And it was their defence early in the piece. Dersman's first quarter in particular was absolutely great. Frangalis, it was Gary Frangalis' birthday last week, and he actually played that way because it's the best game that I have seen him play. Bayes selected on a wing, but I doubt whether he'd play there. I would think that Murphy would probably go there, and Bayes line up in the forward pocket where he took that great mark in the goal square last week. But it does augur well, but I think it's a danger game for the Swans today because Carlton will hit back hard after their poor performance last week.
Speaking of Carlton, Lou Richards, of course, the name that everybody's talking about here today. Number 1, Silvagni. Does he play with his socks down?
Well, it's a great thing to see the name Silvagni back in the Carlton lineup. I know that his dad is terribly nervous about the kid's performance today, and rightly so, I suppose, but they chum with the boys very calm, and knowing the makeup of the family, he'll play a pretty good game if he comes onto the ground. But there's no doubt that back line looks a lot better, and that's been letting them down with Hunter and Arms back, but mainly English too. I still can't work out why this boy hasn't been playing earlier in the season than he has. And of course, a tremendous amount of interest to see whether Rhys Jones will play well against his own side.
Certainly an incentive for him, isn't it?
Well, certainly will be, and of course, a lot of controversy over Rhys Jones leaving the Swans. And the Carlton side are ready to come onto the ground now. They've been a little bit late coming out, Pete. I suppose it may be attacking. There's Rhys Jones, the boy we were talking about. It'll be very, very interesting, I said before, to see just how well could this be an added incentive for him, Bob.
Oh, there's no doubt about that, Lou. I think you'll find that he'd probably be as nervous as old Serge Silvagni at the moment.
Well, he is nervous, old Serge, isn't he?
And there is nothing like, players that have gone back, and there's young Serge, young Stephen Silvagni, and from watching him at Marcelin College, I can tell you that he certainly will not let Carlton down.
I saw him play in the Herald Shield, Bob, and he really impressed me as a great little player.
He's got tremendous courage. He puts his eye on the ball and runs straight at the ball, pretty much in the same manner that his father did, and he'll be around for a long, long time, in my opinion.
We're all mentioning about the father. It's Mother's Day today, but Rita Silvagni's up here, and by golly, is she on tender hooks too, because she is a one-eyed Silvagni fan, isn't she?
That's understandable.
I know it is. And she still looks as lovely as ever, too.
We'll take a break. The umpires, Peter Howe and Jeff Morrow, for this afternoon's clash at the Sydney Cricket Ground. Back in just a moment. And welcome back to the Sydney Cricket Ground. Both teams out on the ground, and Bob Skilton, it already would appear that David Rhys Jones is going to get the raspberry from the Swans fans here this afternoon.
Does come in and play against his old team. I think no matter whether it was the Cloaks and Rains against Richmond and even those players against Collingwood, it is pretty natural that the crowd does give them the raspberry, but I think David's pretty used to that.
Yes, he seems to cop it every week, doesn't he?
Well, he can handle the situation.
And we welcome viewers through ADS Channel 7 in Adelaide to a telecast this afternoon. The Sydney Swans and Carlton, both teams grouping for the toss, and it looks as though Mark Browning has won it. And Bob, judging by the weather pattern, it would appear it's favoured by about a 4-goal breeze.
I would imagine so, Pete, and with the light rain starting to fall and rain forecast, then if you could get a quick start and put 2 or 3 on the board, it might be a big advantage.
It'll be interesting to note whether Silvagni goes to the bench or starts off in the game, Bob. I think it'd be a wise move to put the kid in from the start, because he'd be in the action straight away rather than bring him on later on the game, don't you think?
Yes, I do believe that he may well be.
Kevin Hall.
Serge Silvagni
looks a little bit nervous.
It's understandable, and Silvagni is going down to defence.
35 is Dean. Of course, Silvagni wearing his father's famous #1 Guernsey. The noticeable difference is the pair of garters that he's using to hold the socks up.
It's a lot quicker than his father was too.
Well, he's got half the ability to be a great player, won't he?
Certainly would be. Father was one of the most courageous players and one of the great players that Carlton have had over the, well, as long as they've had a Carlton football club, Peter.
But as Serge Silvagni has said, it's Stephen Silvagni out there, and he'll
that's right.
He'll live on his performance.
And players taking up their positions now. As we mentioned, the Swans will be kicking to the left in the first quarter.
And Harms and Meldrum on the interchange bench for Carlton will pick up the Swans interchange players in just a moment.
The centre of the ground is a lot better than it was last week. Of course, it was very muddy in the centre, and the umpires elected to throw the ball in the air on numerous occasions. Hounsell is one of them.
And Roberts the other player, Pete.
By Jeff Morrow checking on the readiness of both teams.
It's also good to see Sheldon back in the Carlton side. Last week was his comeback game, really, Pete.
One of the veterans in the Carlton lineup. If he fires, then the Blues are well on the way. First quarter from the SCG, the Swans and Carlton.